Is the approval of the minutes from March 5th. Is there a motion? Counselor Graybaugh?
I move approval.
All right, and is there a second? Counselor Ness?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, motion passes. So the next item on our agenda is a flood update. Chief Nelson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for being willing to move the presentation to the beginning of the meeting. I would love to tell you that I'm glad to be here in a springtime flood update instead of September in an even-numbered year, but I'm not, quite frankly. Those are the years we've had floods, 2010, 14, 16, and 18 in September. So this is our first, in a very, very long time, significant spring flood season and event that's shaping up the way this currently is. The spring flood outlook, we thought it was very important for the council to be aware of some things we've been working on and information that the Weather Service has provided us. If you look at this slide, we just sat in on a webinar yesterday with the National Weather Service. They provided it for the district that covers our area and all of central and south central Minnesota. We have really kind of the perfect storm of bad conditions that brought us into a spring season that is ripe for flooding. We had a very wet fall, or if you remember, even aside from the tornado, we had a very wet fall that didn't dry out, a lot of rain, more than normal. So then we headed into winter. We've had a lot of really cold weather, some pretty thick frost. It's still about 2 to 4 feet deep and really hasn't started a true thawing yet. The remaining snowpack, which was a record snowpack in our area, still has somewhere between 1.5 and 4 inches of water content in it now. Not talking about what we had a week ago before the rain and the melt. That's currently. And the Cannon River, just since last week, we've almost been at 897 on the river gauge, which is our minor flood stage, since about last Thursday night, Friday morning. That, if you've been down near the river, you'll see that that's creating some challenges already, and we already have some businesses that are needing to take certain action. The National Weather Service, the main thing, that 2 points they wanted us to understand was one, that these conditions are not going to just disappear in 4 or 5 days. Often when we've dealt with flood events here, they peak, they're bad for a week, and then are going to improve fairly quickly or even slowly over time. They're telling us to expect the river level to stay very high for the next month or longer. What they can't predict then is the rainfalls. And of course, those will create that probability of flooding. That last part, you're going to hear us mention a couple times. They have us at a 60% chance of hitting major flood levels in Northfield in the next several months. For clarification, that's at about 900 feet on our river gauge. Our 2 worst floods in recent history, 2010, 2016, we hit 901 and a little over that. So if we get into that major flood stage, you're going to see some of those same things we've seen in the past that affect our downtown businesses. Sorry, I went one slide too far. We're sharing this slide because if you remember, we were part of a multi-jurisdictional improvement to the USGS river gauge at 2nd Street, and we just redid our JPA on that last year. We asked for the council to approve funding. We're paying for it out of the Stormwater Fund to help keep those river gauges up and running. As a result of us doing that and a lot of work that the National Weather Service has done, they have a new predictive software that they're using, and this isn't brand new for us here in this area. They came down here last year after we signed that JPA, and they sat with Emergency Management Director Tim Isom and I, and we went through a lot of our historical info, gave them a lot of data. They took it back, put it into their software, and now what you see that graph at, the color graph, they did a couple things. They were able to assign an action level at about 895 feet. minor flood stage at 897, moderate flood stage at 899, and major flood stage at 890 or at 900. In addition to that, the software takes all available data that they're collecting at any given time, like right now, and not only are they tracking the blue line on there, what our actual river level has been right to the time that that graph is created, the dotted line up and down, then it predicts out ahead 4 or 5 days what they expect the river level to do. Is it an exact science? No, but it is very helpful, especially our businesses. The majority of them, I've been talking to all of them downtown in the Riverside area that are flood prone. A lot of the property owners are using the USGS information that's readily available. Very helpful for them. And we have placed a link there on that slide that takes you to the USGS site where that's available. And again, the important thing to remember is because of some of those decisions we've made about funding and keeping the river gauges funded properly with our partners, Rice County and everyone else, it makes this available to us. On this slide, we took the same sort of predictive slide and we put some benchmarks along that left side. Just keep in mind, these are approximate levels according to historic records, other floods we've experienced. And so for references, certain things happen at about 895 feet. We usually put the plugs in the river walk, in the walls and in the drains down there because it's soon going to be coming to those points where water starts backing up. At about 898, that's the kind of the floor level of Froggies. So before that level, Froggies has to put some of their protective measures in place. And soon after that, if it goes up higher, sometimes it starts coming through their floor inside there. 899, right around 899 is when the water goes over that West River wall, and all those businesses on that side start getting a little more nervous, and if they haven't taken action by that point, they need to be. That 901.5 was the approximate 2010 level. Keep in mind, in 2010, we did not have the Second Street gauge in the way that we have it now. So when you compare 2010 to all of the floods since then, actually our floods since then, we have a little more accurate data. Any questions on those benchmarks or some of that before I move on? Okay. Yes.
Mr. Marte?
Monty, on the earlier slide, when you had mentioned the 60% of major flood, would that correlate to this predictive slide of the purple?
Thank you for the reminder. When the Weather Service said that we're at that 60% chance of reaching major flood level, that'd be that purple region from 900 feet and above. And that is one of those useful things. I think we all are going to be on a learning curve and going forward, whether it's businesses, other partners in the community. This visual is going to be helpful. I think it helps us literally kind of see and think about those different stages we hit at different levels, and then what it correlates to as far as what we need to be doing. Current flood preparations. The city has been in contact with the Weather Service. We have had sand and sandbags available for the last week for the businesses and property owners. We've been working on press releases and website updates, working with the media directly also to make sure we push those out to them. The city is also, we met yesterday with some of our, with Justin, to be planning for any protective measures for wastewater treatment and the lift stations, some of those areas. We know where at certain levels they put in a backup pump just in case, things like that. Luckily, we're not at that point where any of that infrastructure is threatened right now, but that's in the planning, so they are prepared. Businesses and properties, we've been doing the emergency management by walkabout. I've been down there 3 mornings talking to property owners. We've updated a contact list for all of our affected property owners. Been sharing all that contact info and also making sure, we'll talk about Northfield Shares in a second here, that they're understanding some of the things Northfield Shares is working on. So we've had a lot of two-way communication. That's why I came a little late. One of the property owners that I'd been trying to reach called me right before I left my office, so we were catching up on what he's planning. And one thing I do want to point out, our business owners do a fantastic job of taking care of their property. The ones who are affected all know what to do. Carleton College, I just talked to them 30 minutes ago. They have their own plans in place. They've been at stage 1. They're watching for stage 2. They know what that is for their purposes up there. Our local businesses down there each have their own plan, and it's actually kind of fun, not in this situation, but to have conversation with them and see who they have in charge and what they're planning on. Some of them each time might have tweaked a little bit, something that might work a little bit better than next time, like the spring flood season. So they're being responsible. Larson's just built their big sand dike. If you haven't been down past there, they decided they were just not willing to take the risk and wanted to have it in place. So we'll be continuing those conversations with businesses. Really important, that last point, Northfield Shares has been working again with Rachel and Naomi Meisler, and two important things there, and this is something you'll see in our press releases, and we'll probably keep kind of reminding the public, a little bit of a change. Businesses and organizations who want help are supposed to email directly to Northfield Shares at that email address. Volunteers are being directed to a new platform they literally just set up in the last 6 days. It's a Galaxy platform that allows volunteers to go online, sign up as a volunteer with their information, contact info, so they have that database, the electronic database, that if someone needs help sandbagging, they can then connect the business and those volunteers. Real quickly, I took a couple pictures in the last week. We need to remember some of the mitigation efforts we have taken and spent some money on over the last couple of years. In 2018, all of those electrical transformer boxes down along the river on each side, 3 of them. Dave Bennett worked on that project. On the right-hand picture down behind Larson's, that gives a really good example. I took that picture Saturday morning, and it shows just how much it rose that electrical box up, so we won't have to sandbag it and worry about protecting that in the middle of floodwaters. On the left-hand side, of course, is the view of the new fire department. Some of you might have caught my tongue-in-cheek remark about what I did the other day. It was actually relieving to stand over there and not worry about building a dike to protect the fire department, because it's now part of the landscaping parking lot as part of that new project. And coming up, I don't know if Dave wants to talk about this. There's the 2019 flood wall study. Do you want to talk about that, Dave?
Mayor, members of council, so within the capital improvement plan this year, we do have a study for both the west side, so looking at the scope and cost of possibly continuation of that river wall that was built by Froggies all the way to the north of 2nd Street Bridge. And then also, on the east side of the river, and what can be done over there to improve the flooding situation. I don't know if it'd be a permanent type wall, but what options do we have to improve that situation? So we do have that plan for this year.
And I'll turn the last slide over to Administrator Ben Martig.
So on the heels of our State of the City address, where the mayor outlined some of our strategic plan priority areas, just thought it would be fitting to put it in the context of our why climate action is important for the community, or one of the reasons, is under the blue priority area under the action plan that they're working on developing. Water, wastewater, and stormwater falls under being a resilient community. As we see long-term patterns, we try and track and have good data about what's happening with our climate changes, so that if we look at mitigation investments or what to do to protect the community's assets in times of emergency or tracking. We know Minnesota's becoming wetter. There's more severe storms. We do have warmer winters, but so anyway, there's a link here. The northfieldsustainability.org is a good location where they kind of go through how climate change is affecting Northfield, and this is one of the areas. And so just wanted to kind of emphasize that we are monitoring and kind of tracking things locally. So the better data that we have in tracking trends, the better we'll be at managing and being a resilient community in light of climate action. So anyway, just wanted to close with that commentary as well, kind of putting it in that larger perspective.
All right, thank you. Questions? Chief Nelson, Mr. Bennett, or Mr. Marte from the council? Yeah, Councilor Nakazian.
Mayor Pennell, I don't have a question, but I have a request. Would that be okay? Following on this discussion, we have these links in various ways on the city website and information in our packet, but would it be possible after the meeting to get them all in an email that the council can then forward? I think there are a lot of people that will want to know what we've just shared, and it would help to have that consolidated. It wouldn't take a couple minutes, maybe just these slides, if the links are live. That would
Yes.
that would be great.
In fact, I have an email, a lot of people in the community, not all of us, I had to ask for it, got a Northfield Shares sent out a
Right.
blast over the weekend
Yep.
that is really good at explaining their process and has their links.
Mm-hmm.
I can forward that as well as our updated press release I was also just working on has a bunch of the links in that press release also. Both Northfield Shares to our Everbridge sign up,
Good.
to our emergency preparedness page, kind of what I'd call the big four.
That's good. That's perfect.
Yep.
We'll forward it further.
We can do that.
Anybody else have any other questions? Okay, I do. On the study that's in there, the stormwater, I'm sorry, that slide isn't in here. It's that's in our 2019 plan, update to the west side and the east side and down there in the downtown. When is it going to start, and can it be completed before September?
I do not know the exact date when it's going to start, but I would assume sometime probably in the summer. I don't know if we would have the full study done by September. I mean, certainly it's going to identify costs for improvements, but for future improvements.
So the reason, so just as a follow-up to that, so even years historically, right, it shows that we have major flooding. So in order for any improvements to get into our budget, CIP, and the like, it would be great. I have no idea how long it takes to get stuff like that done. But really appreciate the improvements that we are doing, and if there's any others that are needed, it would be great to know those in advance of when we have to go through our budgeting. And then a second question, or maybe even a request, if we can make sure that the Northfield Shares and the press release, does that get automatically pushed out to all of our board and commission members? So we have 200 board and commission members that are serving. They're kind of our top, I would say, frontline ambassadors to our community in addition to all of us. It'd be really great if there are key sort of emergency type information, if we can push it out directly to that group. I think that would certainly be appropriate, and hopefully some of them are sitting out there in the audience, right?
Yes,
I think we should have all of our board and commission members, including all of us, sign up to Everbridge. Any way that we can, all of our city staff should be signed up to Everbridge, right? I mean, as we have these storm systems come through, I think the better connected we are, and the ease of which we can get those emergency type pieces of information to a broader group within the community rather than, I just think that that's best, so that's
Yep.
all.
I'll be honest, I don't think we've always historically pushed all press releases to our boards and commissions. At least I haven't. I can definitely work with Michelle Mahold and we can get that figured out. And you're correct. Everyone should sign up for Everbridge.
Yes, everybody should sign up for Everbridge, all right? Counselor Nakazian.
A question occurred about the stormwater, the further study. Would that also include opportunities for upriver water catchment to the south And so, or is it just looking at walls in the downtown, or it just seems we have all the natural lands and the river used to ribbon? We've seen those. The historic river has been straightened through the natural lands toward Dundas. So could that be a possibility as well, or are we just looking at the walls in the downtown?
Mayor, members of council, I'd say that the city focus is probably narrower and just downtown. There is a study called the One Watershed, One Plan for the Cannon River that's underway. It's being led by the Dakota County Soil and Water Conservation District.
Okay.
We're just looking at the entire watershed, and probably one component would be probably looking at a broader flood study and looking at those type of things in more detail, but probably not with what we have planned in our budget process this year.
Follow up?
Yes.
But that would be included in the current project underway by the watershed, do I understand you?
Yeah, so there's a couple components. They don't have the flood. They're not doing the flood study as part of it, but they're identifying. We know that flooding is a concern, so that is one of the priority areas in the plan to further look at, along with quality of the water that's running through the river. So that watershed plan is being developed for the Cannon River watershed, entire watershed.
Thank you.
Thank you for mentioning that. I asked that same question earlier today, and no, I didn't prompt that. So I think we see different communities taking different actions to try to alleviate flooding in their community, and so it'd just be good for us to know that we're doing everything that we should be doing, and without the data to help us to know and understand what we should be doing, it's like we're taking a stab in the dark. But thank you for the update and just the electrical boxes, right, and the different things that you guys are doing. Really appreciate it. Chief Nelson?
Thank you, Mayor Pownell. Sorry, in the middle of that Everbridge discussion, I was reminded of one very important piece of this puzzle now that they are using this predictive software and have assigned these levels. If you look at the minor flood stage of 897 feet, anyone who was, or most people anyway, that were signed up for Everbridge got flood warning specific for just Northfield on Friday night, Saturday afternoon, and then it was extended through Sunday. And those are being generated because of the National Weather Service software. And literally it's giving them that ability to focus on just Northfield, which is very unusual. They haven't been able to do that in the past this way. So I wanted to say that publicly, and we're going to continue to educate on that, if you get a flood warning that's talking about specifically Northfield, it may be because we just hit one of those 897, 899 benchmarks.
All right. Thank you so much for that information, taking the time to update us.